evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 675th edition of the Feuerstein's Fire American Soccer Show. I'm your host, Daniel Feuerstein. I'll give you an American perspective of our clubs, leagues, players, national team, and other fabulous moments. Get your daily reading from me and other writers over at Beyond the 90, at beyondthe90.substack.com. Of course, currently over at baddogsports.com until Mr. JJ Pava gets back on his feet. And when that's over with, I will be back with ajmsportsfc.com on local New York Red Bulls American soccer. The comment room is available now here on YouTube. You can join me right now if you'd like. Talk amongst yourselves if you want to, or if you have a question for me, I'll try to answer it to the best of my abilities. So as we saw this past Sunday evening, we saw our players on the U.S. men's national team having an amazing game against Costa Rica. And while, as I've said on the post-game show last night, I believe this was a very gutty, gritty win. They did excellent work. They did fantastic stuff. I would like to think this is a growing up moment for the U.S. men's national team. This roster, I should say. This is a growing up moment for some of them, because what we saw was a team that was gutty, gritty, and they found a way to get the result and move on to the semifinals. This Costa Rican side, under Miguel Herrera, gave our kids a really hard-fought battle. They found a way to go out and put on this big challenge against our kids. And what can you say? You know, Costa Rica has enough quality on that club, on that national team, I should say, to really give our American players a hard time. And I thought there was a moment where they were going to win the game, too. I really did. And it's nothing against the players on the team. I just felt that Costa Rica had plenty of quality. Now, obviously, they were missing some players due to yellow card suspension, injury. And look, if Ugalde did not get a second yellow and was suspended for this game, well, then it's a different story, because he wasn't there to take the penalties, and he's been, pretty good taking penalties for Costa Rica in this Gold Cup tournament. But still, though, you have to ask yourself, though, could they have played a lot better? Did we see some moments in this quarterfinal matchup that says to you they are a polished team? And the answer really is no. But once again, some of these players needs more seasoning. We've already mentioned it many, many times over. I've given you my honest opinions, my honest analysis. And the truth is, some of these players are not yet ready to be on the national team for a World Cup tournament. They need more time. And if they do play in these friendlies, that would be great. If they don't, fine, it's not a big deal. But once again, when it comes to this World Cup that's coming up, and if some of these players can say, oh, it's going to be like riding a bike, it'll be no big deal, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. You may think that. But in reality, my friends, it's not that simple. It's not that easy. But what we have seen so far, Matt Freese, Diego Luna, I would also say Jack McGlynn right now. I think those three right now have done an excellent job. I need more from Max Arfston. I don't think he should be on the World Cup roster. We need more from a couple other players. I also believe Malik Tillman should be on the World Cup roster. Some will say no, some will say yes. But what I can definitely say is that this team needs more help. This team needs more situations. And all I can say is this, is that we need to see more from some of these players that are, I wouldn't say destined to be on the national team right away, but they need more time and more games. Because if they are, as what they say they are, good as advertised, well then, what are you going to do? And so all I can say is until we get, to probably, what I would say, next year, March, April, around that time, so that the roster will be announced, we'll find out what happens when we get there. And until we get there, we'll find out. But right now, I think we're doing pretty good so far. Do we need more? Yes, we need more. Should we find a way to get more? I think so. I think so. But until we get there, we'll find out. But until then, it's a wait and see moment. And then we'll just move on and we'll talk more about it. So, ladies and gentlemen, just something has come to my attention real quick. I will be right back. I promise. I will be right back. And when we get to that moment, and I'll be right back. I shouldn't be too long. It's a real quick situation, but just hang on tight. And I'll be right back. Just hang on one moment. All right, and I'm back. I apologize about that, ladies and gentlemen. Just something came to my attention that I had to get to, so I apologize about that. But I wasn't that long, and everything's been taken care of. So, as I was saying, I am still annoyed, and I'm still upset about what's been going on with the men's national team, with Pulisic, Weah, McKennie. Some of the comments they've made. I just think it's wrong. But once again, it's a situation where hopefully it gets fixed and this stuff does not happen again. That's what I want. But another thing that I want to quickly talk about, and that is, of course, the situation that we have with Inter Miami when they took on PSG in the Club World Cup in that round of 16. Forget about how old those players are. Even though Messi still has a big name and he is just a giant in the world of football, that match against PSG signifies, sums it up, and absolutely shows us Major League Soccer, while they have made some positive trajectory, everything is still well behind. And it's really simple. The roster rules. The ability for these clubs to finally grow up and pay these players what they are truly worth. The growth of this league is too stagnant. They have to open up the purse strings. They have to relax the roster rules. They must, and I repeat, Major League Soccer must start growing up and becoming a real big boy league. It really bothers me because while I'm happy the Sounders did okay, they competed, but they didn't win, but that's fine. LAFC, they competed, but they didn't do anything big. Miami, they're the only ones that got the win. They went to the round of 16, and they got obliterated by PSG, the UEFA Champions League winners. If these guys are going to make a move and go into the next round and at least threaten some of these teams from Europe and South America, well, let me just say this. They're not going to do this with a bunch of over-the-hill players, regardless if one of them is one of the best in the world. Major League Soccer showed the world we are not ready yet. We have players, but do we have the proper direction of putting MLS where they should be? Out of 1 year of the Seattle Sounders defeating Pumas in the CONCACAF Champions Cup final, what's happened with Toronto FC? At the time, the Montreal Impact, Real Salt Lake. What happened? LAFC. They fell to the mighty clubs of Liga MX because even though they are our neighbors to the south and they are a better league, stronger competition, better players, the truth is this: they can beat us with their hands tied behind their backs. They are better, stronger, more tactically aware, and they will find a way. Just look what happened with the Vancouver Whitecaps, unfortunately. And I was rooting for the Whitecaps to finally get that victory, to finally say, you're the first Canadian MLS side to get into the CONCACAF Champions League Cup final, and that you're going to be going into the FIFA Club World Cup. And it didn't happen. Not their best day. But at the same time, when will it finally happen? Outside of the Sounders, when will it happen? We don't know. I don't know. You just have to hope and pray MLS does the right thing. Get rid of the roster rules. Get rid of single entity. And make sure that we are truly a big boy league. That's all I can say about that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get ready. My first guest tonight from north of the border. He covers Canada soccer over there with the rest of his co-hosts, especially Craig Forrest on the Footy Prime Podcast, of course, formerly of Rogers Sportsnet and One Soccer, the one and only James Sharman joining me tonight. And it's great to have you back, James. First time now. We've seen each other since Red Bull Arena for that Gold Cup group stage match with Canada and French Guyana.
That's a long time ago now, isn't it? Holy, that's a long time ago.
Yes, it is.
A few things have changed since those days, I think, in Canadian international soccer. I think for the good. Pretty sure.
Absolutely.
Despite what happened yesterday, I'm pretty happy.
Oh no! Listen, look, I've always been rooting for Canadian soccer to be at the same level as Mexico, as the U.S. Soccer Federation. You know, I've always felt that Canada has to really solidify this North Zone block. We have to have all three nations really be at their best and go out there and prove to the rest of the world, yes, it's not just the U.S. that's been getting better. It's not just Mexico is always the constant. That Canada is there too. All they needed was better direction, better tactics, and you went from John Herdman to Jesse Marsch, and it's just been fantastic so far up to this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this has been, I think the resurgence of Canadian soccer, I say resurgence, I mean, really the rebirth of it, was partly fortuitous with Alphonso Davies coming of age at the same time, Jonathan David coming of age, and then some great recruitment players that maybe we weren't sure would play for Canada, Stefan Eustáquio, for example, committing to Canada. And it all kind of happened at the same time, just as the older guard, the Atiba Hutchinsons, wonderful servants for their country, were getting towards the end. But there's a little bit of crossover there for a while. Milan Borjan in goal, Steven Vittoria, good players, but little crossover. And we enjoyed that one run to the World Cup and got to the World Cup, and it was fantastic. And the country took notice. Football became relevant for the first time, maybe ever, on the men's side in this country. And then, like you mentioned there, John Herdman, walks away for TFC. Long story there. In comes Jesse Marsch. The older guard retire, and those kids are suddenly mature into the prime years. And it all kind of works at the right time. So it's this perfect storm. So, I know the leadership of Canada Soccer has changed a lot as well above the head coaching job, and that had to happen as well. There's been some good progress there. But really, I mean, this was bound to happen at some point. It probably should happen years ago. But they finally seem to be getting things right, I think. And a big part of it was luck and getting this golden generation all together at the same time.
Yep, absolutely. And I'm happy about that. Obviously, goalkeeping has looked even better. Maxime Crepeau, Dane St. Clair. To me, St. Clair, I remember the first time I saw him starting for Minnesota when he was, I think, either backup or third string for them. And then he's just been making saves all over and I said to myself, where's this kid from? And I saw he's from Canada. I'm like, wow. Maybe he'll challenge Borjan for the starting role, and it's been him and Crepeau, to be honest with you. He's really looked fantastic.
He has, but I tell you, I'll go as far as saying at the moment up here, we've got a goalkeeping controversy between Dane and Max. Clearly, Jesse Marsch favors Dane. He has that modern goalkeeper's profile. He's a big guy, very rangy, whereas Max isn't quite as tall. He's more solid, but a lot of people think Max should be the man with the gloves, moving forward. Dane wasn't great at this tournament. Even yesterday in the match, in the loss to Guatemala, you could perhaps question the goal he gave up in regulation time, the two penalties to start with. There's been some concern that maybe he gets the right side, make one of those stops, everything changes. But you're right. Minnesota has been fantastic. Second All-Star appearance as well, just coming up shortly. So you can't knock the guy. But speaking to former goalkeepers, Craig Forrest being one of them, Paul Dolan, they are big fans of Max Crepeau. He's one of those guys that just on the biggest stage, he grows into the game and makes those massive moments his. We saw at Copa America last year. It was Max Crepeau's goal, and he was absolutely sensational. Probably the best player for Canada, in fact, during that tournament. And made some enormous saves. And of course, as you guys know, what he's done in MLS, prior to his move to Portland, that famous / infamous broken leg in the final. The guy's got guts. He's strong. He really kind of pushes that Canadian tough narrative. But it's a good place to be, really, I suppose. Two good goalkeepers. James Pentemis, another good goalkeeper who's, vying for the net in Portland with Max Crepeau. You got James McGill, who plays in England right now, a young player. So, goal has always been a strength for this team from Craig Forrester, Greg Sutton, Lars Hirschfeld, Paul Dolan, Milan Borjan, always been a strength, and it still is now. So I think it's a good place for Jesse Marsch to be, but it's definitely a controversy. And right now it's 50-50 who gets the net in the World Cup next year.
Now let's talk about Jesse. Obviously, I watched that first group stage match between Canada and Honduras in Vancouver at BC Place, and that was an amazing match. But then you're hearing about some sort of crazy yelling, arguing between Jesse and a CONCACAF official. And I'm thinking to myself, when did this happen? How did this happen? There's no way that he would be, right off the bat, swearing, yelling, probably called the guy's mother something, I don't know what it is. And he's just trying to serve the first of his 2-match suspension from the blow up in the 3rd place match in the Nations League. And, you're hearing this even here in the States. We're hearing it through Fox Sports saying there's a big bugaboo going on. And then, I saw on Twitter X your Footy Prime podcast highlight about it, and I was flabbergasted that official was trying to get Jesse into trouble. I could not believe it when I heard that from you, James. Not saying like you were wrong or you made it up. No, I know you didn't. You're an excellent reporter. I just couldn't believe that hearing this, that this is just crazy stuff.
It's a weird one, right? I mean, who knows, really what actually went down. The story was essentially, so as you know, Jesse Marsch suspended for those matches because of the incident at the Nations League. But he was escorted to an area of the stadium where he thought he was allowed to watch the match by a CONCACAF official. And he was told, yeah, you can sit here. So he sat there. And then the same official came out later and said, no, you can't sit here. And that's when Jesse got irate, got really angry. And as you would, I think he's within his rights, even though he should be on best behavior probably at this point. But he lost his rag, and fair enough. And then there were allegations about what he said, and he lost control completely, yada, yada, yada. But what happened was, and this is by complete fluke, is that Canada Soccer was actually recording and filming him for a documentary series and had a GoPro set up there. So it caught the whole incident on camera. And then they could go to CONCACAF and refute what the allegations were, that it wasn't quite as bad as was said. So it was a real big mess up. It's embarrassing for CONCACAF. It's embarrassing for Jesse Marsch, embarrassing for Canada Soccer. But in the end, no harm done. But it does make you wonder, has he got a bit of a target on his back? He's been very outspoken against CONCACAF, even going back to the Champions Cup of Vancouver and the so-called poisoning allegations, and how Jesse Marsch said once again, an MLS team gets poisoned in a CONCACAF sanctioned event. If you're CONCACAF, you don't want to hear that. That's not a good look. So I think there's a target on his back, and he's got to be cognizant of that, and maybe take a breath and calm down a little bit, because they're looking for an excuse right now. And he escaped this time, as he should have done, but next time maybe not. And at this point, if he gets sanctioned, what's the next competitive window? The World Cup.
Yeah,
and you don't want your main man. Excuse me, my dog's barking here.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Marsch. He's a big Jesse Marsch supporter. But you don't want your main man, in the press box missing World Cup games. So I think he's got to look in the mirror as well and understand that, yeah, he's a volatile guy. He's full of passion, and he's done it partly on purpose to kind of fire up his players. But I think there's a line that shouldn't be crossed.
And I know Jesse very well. He managed the New York Red Bulls and MLS before he went over to Austria and Germany I know was assistant at Leipzig, then coached Salzburg, then went back to Leipzig to coach there before he went to Leeds. Look, that's the fiery nature of Jesse, and I understand it and I respect it. But yeah, he's got to, I understand how upset he is at the way U.S. Soccer treated him before he took the Canada job, and rightfully so. But I don't blame him for being upset and playing, as I don't know if you're a wrestling fan, the heel, but no, I don't blame him at all. But still, though, I agree with you. He's got to tone it down just a little bit. He's got to just dial it back.
I wonder. I mean, he's got a chip on his shoulder, right? And I understand why. If you look at his career to date, going to Leeds, he was abused at Leeds and unfairly. He was never given a chance there because he was American. You know, the whole Ted Lasso references was so patronizing, unfair. This is a proven football man who's shown that he's a good coach. He's traveled the world coaching and obviously knows what he's doing. So he was mistreated there. He's been, arguably mistreated here as well by CONCACAF. It seems wherever he goes, the US job, like you mentioned there, obviously rubbed him the wrong way. So you wonder why, it's not a surprise that he's got his back up a little bit and maybe a bit on the defensive. But he has to realize, like you said there, that he has to maybe scale it back a little bit. He was very vocal about his behavior on the sidelines. He goes, I have to convince this Canadian team that we're not just nice guys, that we're not going to take crap. We're just not going to take it anymore. We've had enough. Now, in fairness, John Herdman had began that process before. Canada was believing in itself under John Herdman, who really changed the whole DNA of that football culture in that team. And Jesse kind of continued that. But I get what he was trying to do. But I think at this point, you've got to trust the players to fire themselves up. And you saw yesterday with the Jacob Schaffelberg red card, a really silly red card, unnecessary. Was he too fired up? Did his manager get him a little bit too up for that match? I don't know, but it was a mistake and it cost them in the end, right?
It did. It really did. I mean, even the first tackle he got booked for, that was a strong challenge at the far side touchline. And then on the breakaway, okay, it died down at midfield at the center circle. But still, though, if the last defender is there and he's in front of you, peel away.
Yeah, peel away.
Move to the left. If you can't go right, go left. Don't go straight into him because he's going to make a meal out of it.
And it's CONCACAF, right? We know
Exactly.
the referees are just waiting. They're just dying to give a card out.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So it's naive. And listen, Schaffelberg is a really popular player.
I know he is, yeah.
Because, obviously at Nashville, we see him a lot. And he's a good player at Nashville. But he always plays better, it seems, when he's got the Canadian red on for some reason. He's an impact player. But he plays on that edge. He plays that real fire in his belly. And, we saw at Copa last year, his coming out party and how much fun he was. He was just dynamic. So I think he's getting a bit of a pass. People are frustrated, sure. But he's got a lot of credit in the bank with the fans up here because of the way he plays. But he's he's a young guy, right? Young guys make mistakes. He's got to learn to pick his moments because and let's be honest, it cost him. Canada was playing pretty good half of football. It was a lot of fun to watch. It was go, go, go. It was dynamic. It was just Canada on the front foot. High press, so much energy, and then it changed everything. And I don't think Jesse Marsch adapted properly in the second half, and that's what cost him. But what a huge moment that was for this current group, because that was our first chance since 2000 to really legitimately win something. I think that's how good this team could be, and they blew it. Quarterfinals, lost to Guatemala. That's not good enough. We love to pump the tires of this team, and God, Canadian soccer fans we're a jaded bunch, right? It's been our entire lives. We haven't had much to smile about on the men's side. So we finally have something to smile about. And then that happens. Man, it's extremely frustrating.
Sounds like Rangers fans and Leafs fans.
Yes, 100%.
And I'm a Ranger fan too, so I know what it feels like.
Right? So I get it 100%. At least we got a cup in 94.
Thank God for that. Other than that, we should have had 2014. That's a different story, and that's a different podcast. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, like I said, you had a 4th place finish in the Copa America. You had a 3rd place finish this past Nations League, and now with this bump in the road in the Gold Cup, now losing to Guatemala in the penalty kick shootout in the quarterfinals. I mean, what's the feeling right now with everyone? As you said, everyone's upset. I mean, are they super upset of how they fell out?
I'm gonna tell you, my social media it blew up last night. And a lot of emotion, a lot of anger, and people just throwing their arms up in the air and saying "Fire Marsch" and all this kind of nonsense. They've calmed down since. This is fans being fans.
Of course,
calmer heads have prevailed now, but it's just a frustration because this current edition of CONCACAF, it's not that strong, right? Mexico's they're getting better again, I think, but they're not what they used to be.
Oh,
the
no.
The States, I mean, undermanned and in disarray. Now, that being said, they've kind of turned it around a little bit during this tournament. And I've got a sneaky feeling that the States might win this thing now. But still, it's not a US team that's feeling very good about itself right now. They're beatable for sure. So in comes Canada, who, yes, we're missing Alphonso Davies. We're missing Stefan Eustáquio. They thought they might get him back for the later rounds, but a World Cup.
I heard that. That's terrible. I mean, Porto gets eliminated in the Club World Cup, and then all of a sudden they reneged on their promise to release Eustáquio for the quarterfinals for the Gold Cup. I mean, that is just terrible. Just because you get eliminated in the Club World Cup doesn't mean you can't allow one of your players who is Canadian to join that national team.
And it's preseason now for them, for Porto, right?
Yeah.
They crashed out. They'll be given a week off or 2 weeks off, you'd hope, the players, so they can get some rest. Why not allow Eustáquio to, as was promised? And it really cost this country, right? I wonder where FIFA's involved here, because generally speaking, the national teams have the right to call up whoever they want. But then Porto was coming from a FIFA-sanctioned club tournament, which I heard you talking about before, the Club World Cup, and all the noise around that. But yeah, it's a bit of a messy one, that. It's a bit confusing, but in the end, Canada was the team that suffered, because you put Eustáquio in that midfield yesterday. It's very different, that they missed that type of player. Nico Segura is going to be a really big part of this team moving forward. Plays in Hajduk Split in Croatia, a really good player. Central midfielder, can play right back, can play right wing. But, he didn't have the greatest game yesterday, and he's not at Eustáquio's quality just yet. Maybe he can work beside Eustáquio. But, yeah, that was a big loss, missing out on him. Maybe everything would be different by that point. But that's football. You need depth, right? And there is some depth now in Canada, which we haven't really ever had before. And I'm not just saying that lightly. There's never been depth. And now you have, at each position, you've got a couple of pretty decent players. But not good enough to beat Guatemala down the man, apparently.
I wrote about what happened with Jesse based on your podcast, obviously, and I posted your link on Twitter on my article. I mean, basically, it feels like, the little annoying kid that is upset that, he got punked, he got pranked on, and he ran to the principal's office. That's what this whole thing actually feels like. It's like, look, why couldn't just CONCACAF just go straight to Jesse, say, okay, we understand how you're feeling, and we're sorry about that, but you cannot continue to go off like this. And probably Jesse would have understood. But instead of doing that, you had to let this schmuck, I'll call him a schmuck, this CONCACAF official, to act like, teacher's pet, runs off to the principal's office to basically, you wouldn't believe what Jesse just called me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's football, right? Football, people use strong language in football. It's sport. And it always blows my mind when I come across people, maybe they're new to the industry, media, and they get offended by what they hear in training or on the sidelines. Like, grow up. I mean, okay, certain things shouldn't be said, okay, but really, it's professional sports. Have a thick skin. Someone's pissed off at you, they're going to let you have it. And it may be personal, but just kind of brush it off, right? And that's why you wonder, was there more to it? Is there an element in CONCACAF that want to send a message to Jesse Marsch? I know it's difficult. I mean, listen, Victor Montagliani, the president's Canadian. He's got Canada's back, you'd think.
Mm-hmm.
But, this is well down the pipeline, I imagine. I'm sure Victor didn't have any say in this. But, yeah, it's interesting. And for the longest time, we have complained about being CONCACAF'd on the pitch, with bad calls, not playing that style of football, falling victim to bad refereeing or onerous calls, diving, embellishing. We complain. That's beginning to get a bit better, and now we're complaining about the hierarchy in CONCACAF getting to Canada. I guess we just want to walk around with a big chip on our shoulder, Daniel, really. That's how we're happy as football fans in this country.
Yeah, exactly. I will say this about Victor Montagliani. I think he has done an excellent job of reworking CONCACAF into a better and more functional confederation. I actually was very happy. I'll say this. I don't like the UEFA Nations League because they really don't need that. Even though they're doing an excellent job over there with it, UEFA national teams really don't need those extra games by themselves. We need that. This confederation needs it. And I understand we got more minnows than we have powerhouses. But we are seeing other nations like Curacao becoming a power. We're seeing, outside of Jamaica and Trinidad and Tobago, of course, they're both all yo-yoing up and down. Doesn't matter what tournament it is. But we're seeing, like I said, Curacao. Dominican Republic is starting to improve. Not the level I think they're there yet, but they're very scary right now. I don't know if you ever saw on Twitter, the football picante guys from ESPN Deportes. They were not happy that Mexico barely beat the Dominican Republic 3-2 because they saw what they were doing and they could have just leveled that match like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the world's getting a little bit smaller, right, in that regard. The smaller nations aren't pushovers anymore. The game's growing overall, obviously. A lot of these players are playing in pretty good leagues, internationally. And even within CONCACAF, they have isn't next year, the new headquarters opening up in Dominican, I think, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and it's going to be beautiful facilities, pitches. There's going to be a stadium there. You're going to see far more games and quality games, being relocated to other parts of CONCACAF now. So I'm with you. I think Victor's done a great job there. And he's cleaned it up. I mean, what he took over was an absolute disaster. As we know, it was a laughing stock. And he's really cleaned it up. So, yeah, he'll always get criticized because the top guy always gets criticized, no matter what the profession. But I think you look at CONCACAF now, it's come a long way because there aren't many easy matches. There really aren't. The refereeing is improving. It's not great still, but it's certainly improving. So, and this is what, over the last 10 years, maybe this has really happened, which is a tiny amount of time in the grand scheme of things. So I think you're going to see a lot more tournaments where there are shocks in the quarterfinals. And hopefully we get to see, another country outside of Mexico and the States and Canada once winning the Gold Cup, because that'd be really important. And who knows, maybe a World Cup in this region will kickstart it next year. But I hope so, because I want to see more successful CONCACAF teams, because, Honduras, Panama, Costa Rica, they've been lurking there for a while. Haven't really gone that next step, but maybe this is the time.
Yeah, exactly. Especially Panama. I think Thomas Christensen has done an amazing job, made them better tactically, and probably like Jesse himself, rah guy, but he's really improved them tactically. And I mean, I have nothing to say but to praise them, because they've beaten my team at least in 3 different tournaments: Gold Cup, Copa America, Nations League. The problem is the fans. They're poo-pooing it away. Panama is not really a difficult opponent. Oh yeah, you didn't see what they just did to us recently? I mean, it's just fans sometimes can just be really silly and stupid, unfortunately.
Yeah, of course, that's what we do. No matter the sport, right? You can always. Yeah. It's so funny when you do go on social media in the aftermath of a bad loss, and just you see the emotion and the vitriol directed at everyone, and then you give it 12 hours, and you just see that tone just shift a little bit. People actually go for a night's sleep, wake up next morning, realize that Rome hasn't fallen completely, and that we'll be okay. But man, to be a sports fan, it's thankfully working in the business, it's kind of killed a little bit of that for me. I'm a bit more objective now. I don't get up quite as high and quite as low, unless England's playing in penalty shootouts. It's a different story entirely. but overall, hey, we just won the European Under-21 Championship. So hey,
I heard. Congratulations.
There's hope.
That's great. Well, I was going to ask you this, though. I mean, obviously, Craig Forrest, CBC soccer commentator, was on that 2000 Gold Cup squad that won it all against Colombia at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. Has he taken this loss the hardest, because they are the only side to win the Gold Cup for Canada?
It's funny. We have Craig and we have Jimmy Brennan on our show as well. He was also there. He was a younger player at the time. And I joked with him. I said, no, deep down, you're kind of happy, you're still relevant. You're still the last guys to win this thing. And they're like, no. Craig's he bleeds Maple Leaf, right? He always has. When Canada qualified for the World Cup, he was on the pitch side and he was being interviewed and he was crying. And this is a 6'5" mountain of a man, just broken down because he was so emotional seeing Canada finally qualify for another World Cup for the first time in 30 years. So he takes these things hard. He thought they had a very, very good chance to win it this time around, and he gets very frustrated about it. But he still believes in this team, still thinks it can be a very successful World Cup, which for Canada will be getting out of the group. It's that simple. And being seeded, 48 teams, there should be an opportunity for that. And I think if Canada get out the group, Craig and Jimmy and all the ex-players would be very satisfied with that, even though the fans might want to go a little bit further than just that.
I have something to tell you real quick because I want you to have a nice laugh. I think Frank Yallop, real nice guy, was the head coach at San Jose Earthquakes, LA Galaxy. His last coaching job was at Monterey Bay. So this is when Fox Soccer Channel was around in the States. And occasionally they would show highlights or former matches from the Premier League when they were able to show England games. So they showed Ipswich Town, which had Craig and Frank, against Manchester United. And the result's always the same. They got blasted by Man United. So I'm a young, reporter. I'm at Giant Stadium with the Red Bulls. They're taking on the Earthquakes. And so I always go to the Red Bulls locker room first, then I go into the visiting locker room next. So I see Frank. I ask him my questions, have some fun. After I said, Frank, thank you very much. I want to shake his hand to say thank you because, I want to be professional about this. And I said to him, Frank, I got to tell you, I saw on Fox Soccer Channel, I saw you and Craig for Ipswich Town against Manchester United. He cuts me off. Oh, bloody hell. Not that one again.
The 9-0, was it?
He knows. He knows what the results are going to be.
It's funny. Every time, for those that don't know, so United beat Ipswich 9-0, and Craig was in goal for all those goals. And he goes, he actually saved a penalty in that match as well. He played really well, he says. he regales it so well. But every time in the Premier League there's a high-scoring match, and that could be broken, say it's a 7-0 or an 8-0. There actually was a 9-0, I think, a couple of years ago at Southampton. He goes, his phone blows up from the media in England, wanted to talk to him about that match. He says, the only time they call me anymore about Ipswich is about that bloody match, 9-0. So he gets it still. So does Frank. It's one of those moments, right? And we give it to Craig whenever we can. Whenever it's possible, we'll make a point of bringing up the 9-0. Or the 7-0 with West Ham, that one as well.
That's great. That's funny. Actually, the last time I had Frank on my show was an Open Cup review show. He couldn't come on live. I recorded it with him on the old Blog Talk Radio, which of course they're gone now, unfortunately for me. But that's all right. I was going to make this move here to StreamYard anyway. But real nice guy. Enjoyed Frank. Obviously, I don't have Craig's number because I would have said to him, "Congratulations on Ipswich getting promoted to the Premier League."
Yeah.
But I let Frank. I say, Frank, it's Daniel Feuerstein. Congratulations on Ipswich getting to the Premier League. Oh, thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thumbs up.
Frank's a great guy. He was a good coach as well. He actually he did a really good job. I think he got really frustrated with the nonsense behind the scenes at the time in Canadian soccer. But he did a very good job there and very respected here north of the border as a coach and player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he really is. And I guess my last question for you is this. People are complaining right now. Why is the Gold Cup always in the United States? And I understand why it's in the United States all the time because there's not enough proper stadiums across the Caribbean, even across Central America, that cannot host it. I know Mexico has the stadiums, but they don't go there. There's always going to be the one home game for Canada, whether it be in Toronto or in Vancouver. They haven't been to Montreal yet, which even though I think they should be in Montreal one time. But why can't Canada host a Gold Cup? I don't know when the Canadian Football League season starts. I'm assuming it's like July, August or something like that. But why can't Canada host one?
Yeah, they could. And the thing is, Canada's biggest issue is stadiums, right? They just don't have enough good, decent quality stadiums. That's why just really Vancouver and Toronto are having World Cup games. Montreal or Edmonton have stadiums, but they're not the greatest of quality. But for Gold Cup, as we see every single year, it's very rare that they sell out Gold Cup games. You don't need to have them in massive stadiums, most of those games. Outside of the big nations, really 3, maybe 2, maybe just the States and Mexico, quite honestly. You don't. And there's enough soccer-specific stadiums in the CPL now that you could probably have, 5,000 to 7,000 people watching a game and they're looking okay on TV if it's packed. But even in those stadiums, they're small and the facilities aren't that great. So that's the biggest reason. But I think you could spread it out more for sure, more than just the one game in Toronto or Vancouver. And Mexico could certainly host it. But you get why FIFA and CONCACAF are going to the States. I mean, it just makes more sense. There's the best stadiums in the world. There's so many of them. It's where the money is. It makes a lot of sense. I know there's concerns about the weather this year, but that's like any summer in the States in certain areas, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't see it changing. Gianni Infantino lives in Miami, I think, doesn't he? He feels he's American. He's good mates with old Donald. So I don't see it changing anytime soon, unfortunately.
Yeah, then when you get ready for the 2030 World Cup, guess where he's going to be? He'll be in Spain. He'll be in Portugal.
Yeah.
He'll be in Morocco. Then he'll go to Argentina. Then he goes to
That's
Uruguay.
the secret, right? That's the future, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It just makes sense.
It
makes
does.
complete sense nowadays. So hopefully that'll be the future.
It does. Yep, absolutely it does. But anyway, James, I really appreciate your time for coming on. Thank you for taking the invitation. Hope you can come back on again. We could talk some more. And I hope your dog has a good night too. But I appreciate your time coming on. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Daniel. Really enjoyed it. Anytime, give me a call.
I will, definitely. It's James Sharman, Footy Prime Podcast over in Canada, covering the Canadian game and just anything else involving football in Canada and even in England is a lot of fun. Joining me now is a gentleman I haven't had on in a long time, but I'm glad to have him back on. Finally, live. No recordings, no delays, no nothing. He's here to talk about a great moment that has happened in the Bay Area for the Oakland Roots, and this is from the oaklandrootsblog.com. Jonathan Komisu. John, welcome back, my friend. Welcome to StreamYard for the show, and how are you, sir?
Doing well. Glad to be back on. It's been a while, Dan. Glad to see you again.
It's great to see you again, too. I got to tell you, the news broke out that finally the Oakland Roots have now officially purchased the former training facility that they've been using to borrow, but now they've bought it from Alameda County and the city of Oakland, and they've turned it into their own facility. No more Raiders garb, no more Raiders colors. It's all Oakland Roots, and I'm just so excited when I saw that.
Yeah, it's a special move. You know, they've been there since 2022 on a year-to-year basis almost. So they were structuring a deal with another company, Prologis. They were going to purchase the site, and then they would lease from them for 10 years. That deal fell through back in December, and it's been a process. Just, we knew that Roots were going to look for a similar structure, have another company purchase the land, and then lease from them for an extended period of time. This deal is even better than that last one. Last one was 10 years with Prologis. This one is 15 years with Redco, a development company. And there are also options for another 10 years on top of that. So 25 years in total. So it's a big move for the club. You think about not just from a recruiting, standpoint, you have instantly probably the best training facility in all of the USL Championship, but also maybe one of the top facilities in all of soccer in the United States, MLS included. I mean, they're going to rival some Premier League teams with this facility that they have. It's a former NFL facility. That's top of the line when it comes to sports, professional sports. So, big move. It's not just the training facility they're acquiring. It's also the former Raiders headquarters that is right next door. And that is useful for, the business side of things, but also film study and other facilities that they have that looks attractive to when they want to, say, rent the building, rent the time to one of these visiting national clubs that, that comes in for Gold Cup and so forth.
And think about this, though. I mean, the World Cup will be here next summer, and that's now an excellent location for any national team that will be playing on the western side of the nation, especially in by the Bay Area, because I think Santa Clara is not far away. from where some of these World Cup games will be. I mean, you could probably see whoever gets, qualified. You could probably see Argentina over there. You could probably see France over there, or maybe even a Spain or a Brazil that will come to that facility. Even when Mexico, if they get down the road and then they have to leave their homeland, their home soil to go to, who knows, maybe to SoFi Stadium or over at Levi Stadium, and they're going to say, yeah, we want to use your facility, Oakland Roots. We want to use your practice facility.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough timing. If Prologis went through with the deal, we may have seen a guarantee that Roots would host a team for the World Cup. I'm not sure if that window is still open. I'm not sure if the deadline has passed to be like, okay, you can host a team for the World Cup. I know Santa Clara has already gotten that clearance. So, if this announcement came out 6 months ago, I think they would have had a better shot. Maybe they still have a shot. I mean, it's a wonderful facility. I think any national team looking for a home base when they're playing in Santa Clara, they would see Roots and what they can offer in comparison to even the San Jose Earthquake and say, Roots have a much better setup. I mean, these beautiful grass fields, then that headquarters where you can have these meeting rooms with hundreds of seats, and you think to like on HBO Hard Knocks, all the when they show the film study in the big room. Now Roots have that, so there's going to be a lot of teams that come in and play friendlies in Santa Clara and so on and so forth. And Roots are now definitely at the top of that list for when teams are looking for a headquarters for that weekend.
I have to tell you, the day that the Athletics left Oakland, and trust me, I was not happy this happened. I was not happy that another professional sports team left the Oakland area. I know the Warriors are in San Francisco, but it's just not the same. I understand that.
Yeah.
But still, to see the Raiders leave, and then to see the way the Athletics, the way that the owner of the Athletics, we all know who he is. We won't say his name because obviously it's a pox on everyone's head. John Fisher. Anyway,
like Voldemort. Yeah.
Exactly. I have to admit, the day that I heard the Roots were moving into the Coliseum, I thought it was the wrong move to make. I really did. Look, I'm not from the area. I know that. But my thing is, I'm looking at it in an American soccer, landscape. I'm looking at the landscape of the sport. That's why I felt, what's the point of moving into that humongous stadium for no reason when you said you're going to build your temporary stadium in a section of the parking lot by the Coliseum? And I thought you should have just kept that. But I'll admit it, that I was wrong, because seeing almost 25, almost 30,000 plus filling the Coliseum for soccer, not for a friendly with, European clubs or South American clubs or national teams from England or from Europe and South America, or a U.S. men's national team game or a women's national team. They actually filled it for the Roots.
Yeah.
And I was so taken aback. I admit it. I was wrong. But I know that there are plans to build that new stadium. Hopefully soon they'll start shovels in the ground. But I was wrong.
I mean, I covered the game. It was special just to sit there on the sideline. I take photos during the game, so I'm on the sidelines. And, I told people it was a game that it was difficult to actually pay attention to the game because I was looking at the stands and just really just taking it all in, how loud it would get, watching the wave go around the whole stadium. So yeah, it was a special moment. They became the highest attended game since FC Cincinnati was in the in the league, when they were having that miraculous run of sellout after sellout after sellout. So Roots weren't able to copy them in that standpoint, but they were able to get that, incredibly high number that, it makes the USL look good in itself.
It really does. Yeah.
And staying on that point, in regards to the temporary stadium, I know that they're leasing the Coliseum for about $3 million a year. That's not counting all the extra, costs involved with it, but they're leasing it for $3 million a year. Theoretically, if they're there for a decade, that's $30 million in that rent. I know that to build the stadium, a temporary stadium, it definitely would have cost, a lot more than that. I actually cover high school sports in the region here. There's a local high school that has a beautiful new gym that was built. It's gorgeous, has facilities, has even a jumbotron in there, and that cost $60 million. So what would a temporary stadium for Roots cost? Probably over that. Mm-hmm. So in that perspective, they're actually saving some money being at the Coliseum, instead of building a temporary site. But being at the Coliseum hopefully expedites the process of searching for their permanent stadium. They're eyeing Howard Terminal. They've already announced that publicly. And they've also announced publicly that now with the training facility under wraps, all of their focus now goes towards searching for the permanent stadium. That also tells me that they feel that they have some stability at the Coliseum. So I think we can expect them to be there for the foreseeable future, and maybe up until they put shovels in the ground in that permanent stadium.
And let me also ask you this. Obviously, there is now a minor league baseball team, an independent baseball team that has their own stadium, and they're basically called Oakland Baseball Club or something like that.
Oakland Ballers.
The Oakland Ball. Thank you very much. I want to make sure I got it correct. Thank you. Oakland Ballers. And I'm happy they brought back baseball, obviously, because that was just gut-wrenching. But outside of that, when I saw the video from some famous, whether it be politicians, designers, musicians, rap artists who are from Oakland, these people who are from the city, they're from the community, that were never, ever soccer fans, but now they've all latched on to this soccer team saying, you are Oakland. Mm-hmm. You as a soccer fan, and I know you cover the team and you're doing it on the professional level as well, but honestly, and even I take aback sometimes because I am a fan too.
Yeah,
that's how we started here. We start as a fan, and then if we want to excel it into being part of the media, then we do that. How did that feel for you to see regular people, never a soccer fan until now?
Yeah, it's special. I think back to the first season for Oakland Roots when I was at the game with my buddies, and they bring out a famous rapper, local rapper, Mr. Fab. And he's up in the little booth area, for the important people, I'll say. And we're yelling at him, and he yells back like, "I don't know anything about soccer," but it speaks to the camaraderie with the community that this club is trying to build. They're trying to fill that void of the Raiders. I grew up a devout Raiders fan. It's tough to watch them in Las Vegas. Baseball a little less so, but football was always my game. I cover football too professionally. So to see the Roots try to fill that void, it's been special to watch. There are definitely growing pains. I think that they will be the first ones to admit that to you. You could bring up the USL table for
don't worry of that. We're going to leave it alone. We're going to leave it alone. We're not going to touch that one. No. I'm here this is a happy moment.
Yes.
Think good thoughts. Think happy thoughts.
Yes.
Sing the song if you'd like. It's okay. No.
Yeah. So, they are really, no pun intended, putting roots into the community. We need to see that continued growth. Hopefully end of season comes and there'll be that big push for people like, oh, there's 3 games left, 4 games left, we got to go now. So I mean, hopefully they could get back above that 10K number with a little bit more frequency. But I mean, it's a great place to start. I mean, especially selling like 31,000 in that first game. I mean, it speaks to the potential that they have. And with this facility, I mean, it lifts them up, continues to lift them up and say, like, we are a real professional sports organization here to make local talent, lift them up to the highest they can achieve, and also groom talent that we bring in from around the world, because that's soccer. That's the beautiful game. You got to bring in the people also from outside the country.
Exactly. That's why it is the most beautiful game. You can get anyone from around the world to come play for your little town, your big city, your area, and they just do wonderful things with that little ball on the field, and it's just fantastic to watch. Other than that, Jonathan, anything special coming up on your blog, or any articles we should be looking at? And once again, where do you think the Roots should try and go, during transfer window to bring someone over to maybe help them get out of the slump?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I definitely feel like the roster is still a bit of a work in progress. They have a new coach that just completed his 4th game, Benny Feilhaber. He is a former United States men's national team player for, God, so long. And he has a lot of potential himself. He said it himself. This is his real first team opportunity as a coach. He came from Sporting KC2, where he was implementing other people's ideas, grooming these players in someone else's vision. Now he's the coach. Now he has the opportunity to really create his system and his identity and philosophy of football. And with that, he's going to have to make some moves. It's an interesting situation too. He's only under a 5-month deal till the end of the season. So if he goes above and beyond, theoretically, Roots might have a really hard time retaining him. So maybe there is a little even ground. I think they will definitely be in pole position to bring him back. He also has to prove that he's the guy for the job. Roots have had 6 head coaches in 4 years. So they definitely are in a place where they need stability in that front. Like I said, growing pains. So
6 coaches, 4 years.
Yeah.
And another thing, and another thing.
Their first season in the USL Championship, they had a coach he didn't even make it to game 1. So, I mean, growing pains. This is that, they're still going on. But with Benny, I think that we're in an interesting situation. We have July 1st is the start of the USL transfer window, international transfer window. So I'm curious to see what positions they bring in. They've already made a move for a fullback. I'm not sure if they want to double up there. They also lost a fullback. They might lose another. And the midfield looks good. It's really a work in progress. So I'm really curious to see what Benny's and the front office's decisions are going to be in this, in this period, because they're not far out of the playoffs. Theoretically, they're not far out of top 4. I know people in the front office have said that they feel top 4 is very, very important. They want to try and get that home, at least one home playoff game, and see what they can sell tickets wise, but they have a long way to go. I think that the goal with Benny is to just make the playoffs. He said his goal is to really show the fans that he has a philosophy, a system in mind that they can tell people about, describe with confidence, and not feel like, they don't know what they're talking about. And that's been kind of how Roots have functioned over the last couple of years under their different coaches. There was no hard system that you could be like, this is how Oakland plays. It kind of varied match to match. And it shined through in the results with just how inconsistent they are. So, going into an interesting period. I know that they're not going to call it quits on this season just yet. If they want to push, it's going to require some moves. So we'll see what comes down the pipeline.
Absolutely. Jonathan, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much for joining me tonight. Once again, I'm happy for Oakland Roots. They finally got their training facility finalized. And of course, what's up next? Getting that stadium, getting that permanent spot for that stadium, and building that thing all the way up as far as they can, because I'm just glad to see Oakland actually gravitating to soccer full time. And it's just great to see that. You have a good night. Thank you very much.
All right, Daniel. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
All right. Thank you. That's Jonathan Komisu from OaklandRootsBlog.com, covering the Oakland Roots. And now we're going to go ahead and talk about the New York Red Bulls this past week, as they were on the road midweek at Toronto FC and then at home against Minnesota United FC. Both were draws. And I'll get to the Minnesota game in a moment, because once again, the Red Bulls, unfortunately, and I'll put up the score here from the game on Wednesday night, Mohamed Sofo getting the opening goal in the 20th minute, and nothing else afterwards. And then Toronto were able to level the match in the 51st minute. Theo Corbino makes it 1-1, but that's as far as it goes. Both teams losing players due to injury. One for Toronto, I believe, lost due to a groin pull. You can see him holding on. Then you also see, unfortunately for the Red Bulls, you saw Lewis Morgan having a quad issue. You saw Raheem Edwards having a stomach issue, but thankfully he was able to survive it. Probably was a muscle issue. And then Victor Bogash with a possible concussion. Thankfully, no concussion, but they did sub him out. They did sub him out to get that concussion sub going. So they got a sixth one, which means Toronto gets a sixth sub as well. But, Sandro Schwartz was not happy that they went from an international break to a match in Austin, now to another international break, and then coming back from it. And just a lot of disconnect in the midfield after the first half. They had some chances to retake the lead, just never materialized. And unfortunately for the Red Bulls, it was a 1-1 draw on the road, 2-match unbeaten streak, or should I say 2-match winless streak, I should say, with that loss to Austin, and then that draw up in Toronto at BMO Field. But MLS has to do a better job with that. They really must do a better job with how they do their scheduling. Obviously, we'll see next year with the World Cup. Excuse me. And it should be a lot different. Now, let's talk about what happened this past Saturday night, because I got a lot to say about this past Saturday night's game against Minnesota United FC. First things first. There you have it, folks. And we'll get to the red card situation with Sandro Schwartz. Obviously, great goal to open the scoring for Emil Forsberg as Kyle Duncan looped that ball in front of Eric Maxime Choupo-Moting down the far side along the touchline. Choupo-Moting cuts in, fakes out the defender, attacking the net. He just passed the ball into a wide open space to Emil Forsberg, who was the trailer, buried it, make it 1-0. Unfortunately for the starting goalkeeper for Minnesota United, got hurt as Choupo-Moting combination. Yes, he fell onto the keeper, but I thought he got somewhat pushed by the defender, who he basically left in the dust. And they had to make a substitution and brought in their backup goalkeeper, because at the time Dane St. Clair was playing for Canada in the CONCACAF Gold Cup. Then all in the first half, I should say, Kelvin Yeboah made a nice move in front of Omar Valencia. Basically, felt like the pantsed him a little bit in some ways, but then again, he just nutmegged him in between his legs and beats Carlos Coronel, who didn't even expect that to happen, 32nd minute. And then poor marking, poor ball watching by the defense, allowing Anthony Markanich to convert that opportunity off of a throw-in. Now, it was headed back to Markanich, who just lifted his right foot, one-timed it past Coronel to make it 2-1. Nothing going on in the second half until Eric Maxime Choupo-Moting with the equalizer in the final minute of regulation before 4 minutes of second half stoppage time. Now, here is my problem with this match, and that is referee Ricardo Montero Araya, who is not from Pro, who is from Costa Rica, because FIFA informs Pro, well, we want this guy, who's going to be a candidate for the World Cup to learn how to officiate in the United States. And they have no choice. They have to go with what FIFA says. And he made a mess of things. Really, really made a mess of things. Poor decision-making with his officiating. There should have been a shout for a penalty when Eric Maxime Choupo-Moting tried to head that ball into the net, took a boot to the face. That should have been a penalty, and it was not. VAR, who had to review that, on the check said check complete, which was absolutely incorrect. Rami Toucan said check complete. How is that not a penalty, getting a boot to the face? How? And then Emil Forsberg gets called for a foul in second half stoppage time, and it wasn't even a foul. Then later on, they get a corner, Minnesota. Minnesota, already at the 4 minutes, Minnesota allowed to take the corner, wasting close to a minute into the match after 4 was displayed on the fourth official's board. Red Bulls stop the corner. They go on an attacking run, on a counterattack, and as soon as they get to the midfield circle, the referee blows his whistle. That's at least, by my count, an extra minute and 21 seconds after 4 minutes of stoppage time has elapsed, that the referee all of a sudden gives Minnesota that advantage, but they won't give the Red Bulls that advantage to go on the counter? Unbelievable. And then what happens all of a sudden, like a bat out of hell, Sandro Schwarz runs right at the referee. Didn't go right in his face. Did not step up and call him names. He kept the distance. But he gets his red card for that, and he'll be suspended for the next road match, which will be this upcoming weekend at the San Jose Earthquakes. So it's just mind-boggling and upsetting. Mind-boggling and upsetting to see an incompetent referee just not doing what should be done with the laws of the game. He was incompetent and stupid. And the only reason why I say this is because it's not just I don't want this to happen to the Red Bulls. I don't want it to happen to any club, either at home or on the road, to go through what that referee did to the Red Bulls. That man, Ricardo Montero Araya, must be retrained by the Costa Rican Football Federation on the laws of the game. Speak to your top referee trainer and get that man back in the classroom and let him relearn the laws of the game. That was a travesty. Now, that's the same thing that happened to the Red Bulls in Austin. Now, once again, I'm not blaming the referee for how the Red Bulls lost in Austin. And I'm not blaming the referee for how the Red Bulls drew against Minnesota. The Red Bulls were at fault for losing in Austin because they were caught ball watching. They were at fault for being down 2-1 to Minnesota, caught ball watching again. So all I'm saying is that it's not the referee's fault that they lost. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I want the referee to call an even Steven game, relearn the laws of the game, and make sure he does it correct. Because right now, if I'm grading it, or if my colleague JJ Pavlik grades it, that guy gets an F. And I wish that the Costa Rican Football Federation would inform him, you need to be retrained for the laws of the game because you, sir, are terrible. Terrible. That was disgusting. You know, he didn't call many fouls, and I'm just thinking to myself, okay, look, if this is how he's going to be from the start to the end, I can live with it. He wants to let them play, he lets them play. It's fine. I can live with it. But the way he officiated in the second half was an absolute disgrace. I didn't go over every single situation he blew his whistle for or officiated, but it was a complete and utter disgrace. Makes me angry, and it makes me mad. I want competent officiating, not just in pro, not just in the United States, not just in Canada, not just in Mexico, but everywhere around the world that has an official tie, an affiliation with FIFA. Period. Period. And what we saw was a travesty. An absolute disgusting travesty. We cannot have that again. Cannot. It just burns me up when I see incompetent officiating on the pitch. We are not there, whether you're a fan at the stadium or a fan watching at home. We are not here to watch the referees. We are here to watch the players perform on the pitch, score the goals, stop the opportunities. Beautiful play, beautiful passing, the beautiful game. And when it gets muddied like that by incompetent officiating, we all lose. And now to some sad news. Of course, the loan for Felipe Carballo has expired. I believe today is the last day of it, that it's officially over. He will return to South America, return playing for Grêmio in Brazil. Hopefully, when that contract does expire, hopefully maybe Carballo can return to the Red Bulls, but we'll have to wait and see when that's going to happen. We'll never forget him, as I like to call it, during the MLS Cup playoffs last year against New York City FC, the City Field Special. And that was that thunderclap of a hit that nailed Twine inside the top of the net and the back of the net, winning it 2-0 against NYCFC in the Eastern Conference semifinal match. That was a special goal. He scored twice in the playoffs, got the first one in Columbus in the first leg, got the second one in the semifinals of the Eastern Conference. Could not perform, unfortunately, due to injury in the Eastern Conference final or in the MLS Cup final, which is really a shame. Of course, I heard he enjoyed being in New York. He wanted to stay. Unfortunately, just could not get worked out. And that's football sometimes, unfortunately. Sometimes it goes your way and sometimes it doesn't. Even on a loan deal. Sometimes you're able to sign the player, sometimes you're not. But I will say this. I hope safe travels back to Brazil for Felipe Carballo, for the Uruguayan. Hopefully he'll enjoy his time back with Grêmio. Maybe I've heard he might go back to Uruguay for Nacional, but that's what I've heard. I don't hold me to it. Once again, it's just a rumor, but we'll have to wait and see what's going to happen for Felipe Carballo on the back end, being back in Brazil for Grêmio. And hopefully he'll continue on with his career. And like I said, if he's available when his current contract is over and he wants to come back to the Red Bulls and maybe it's a better deal, it's a better setup, hopefully he'll come back, because I would love to have him back for the Red Bulls if it is possible. So once again, this past Wednesday, 1-1 draw in Toronto for the New York Red Bulls, and this past Saturday, 2-2 draw at home to Minnesota United FC. Now, next week, this coming Saturday, they'll be on the road at PayPal Park against Bruce Arena and the San Jose Earthquakes. Then it's a double feature next week where they will be in Philadelphia for 2 games. U.S. Open Cup quarterfinal, which you can watch that 7 o'clock Eastern on CBS Sports Network and streaming on Paramount Plus. And then, of course, going back to Subaru Park on Saturday in a league match against the same Philadelphia Union on Wednesday and Saturday. We will see what they can do against Bradley Carnell, Ty Baribo, and the rest of the Philadelphia Union in the U.S. Open Cup matchup. I believe this will be their 5th Open Cup match against them. Red Bulls are currently 0-1-3, with, of course, the 1 being the draw, because it ended in a draw at Red Bull Arena, now Sports Illustrated Stadium, but they won it in penalty kick shootout that year. They went to the final in 2017. But this will be Bradley Carnell versus Sandro Schwarz, Red Bull versus Red Bull. We'll wait and see what happens, and it should be a fun and exciting game. Cannot wait to see what's going to happen there. I want to thank my guests tonight. I want to thank from the Footy Prime Podcast in Canada, James Sharman. I also want to thank from OaklandRootsBlog.com, Jonathan Komisu, joining me tonight. Join me this Wednesday night, USA versus Guatemala, semifinals of the Gold Cup post-game show, starting at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. If it does go into extra time, I shouldn't say extra time, but into a penalty kick shootout, and if I have to push the start time back, I will. Once again, my name is Daniel Feuerstein. Thank you very much for watching me tonight. And as always, please, 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 ladies and gentlemen, enjoy your football. Thank you. Have a good night. Take care. So long, and bye-bye for now. Have a good night, everybody.